Jim Rohn says discipline weighs ounces, regret weighs tons.
Coming at you live from San Diego, California at the Social Media Marketing World Conference. And in true EFM fashion, we hit up every possible session and digested as much information as we could.
I think I still feel a couple of those breakfast burritos and sundaes swashing around in my belly. This is pretty epic podcast episode to record up here on the 16th floor, overlooking the beautiful San Diego Bay, Coronado Island. We are just three guys here without McCluskey this time. Chris, we miss you, but we are crazy about our wives. We love our kids, and we want to kill it in business. And this has been a week to move EFM forward, having some fun conversations, planning, dreaming, visioning about what's next, learning some social media tactics along the way, but really just being together, seeing how we can move this thing forward. Guys, what happened the other night about how this episode even got started?
Yeah, you know how we hang out in the networking plaza and just hope to meet the right people who resonate with the EFM brand, and then we take them over to the little networking area and ask if we can interview them. Isn't that how this happened?
Well, we do networking because we're at the hotel right across from the convention center. We had the hot tub mastermind. No, well, actually, yes. We did do a hot tub mastermind.
Actually, yes.
We're in this gorgeous hotel, and on the 6th floor, there's a balcony with a pool and a hot tub. And so we went down there. We met this young guy who was at our conference, and we just struck up a conversation. He's doing all these cool projects, and he asked us what we did. We told him about the podcast. And then as he learned what we did, he had a question for us. And so we were like, could we use this question for our podcast? He was like, sure, that'd be awesome.
That's some great backstory. Cue the audio.
Hey guys, it's Casimir PB, new to the podcast. Happened to meet you guys at Social Media Marketing World at the Omni Hotel out by the pool. Had a really great conversation with you guys. And I have a question. I'm new in a relationship of about 10 months, but I'm very committed to this person, and I know that I want to spend the rest of my life with them. I also have entrepreneurial interests. Early in a relationship, I know you need to build a good foundation. I guess I want to hear your guys' opinions on how you work through balancing having to work on these entrepreneurial interests of yours, but also building a solid foundation, just because I don't want to be years down the road from now wondering if I could have done something better or differently. Want your guys' opinion on that. Thank you guys. Great to meet you, and I wish you best of luck on the podcast.
Kashmir, that is an awesome question to ask, and it was just a blast to get to hang out with you, talk through some of this, and we got to really unpack that afterwards too. And man, number one, we just want to affirm you are asking the right questions. As you approach this idea of get into a long-term commitment, a marriage, bringing your entrepreneurial ideas, you're way ahead of most guys coming into that space. Michael, Jamie, how did you guys approach marriage and finding what it was going to be like with your own pursuits, balancing yourself and work on yourself and this new relationship?
Oh my gosh. I was 25 years old when we got married. I thought it was all going to be roses and unicorns and we were going to have the life of our dreams. It was just going to happen by itself.
Roses and unicorns have very sharp implements to them, and they hurt.
I wasn't asking those questions or seeking wisdom like Kashmir is. I'm excited for you and Amy as you guys get married next year, because if you keep asking those questions, you're going to find wisdom.
Yeah, that's good. Jamie, I am much more aligned with you in that. I was 21 when I got married.
Gosh.
I was a little baby. I had hair. And I could be barely growing above my lip. You know?
And how did you think marriage was going to be?
Man, I was so immature with what that was going to be like in terms of the effort that was needed, the conversations that were needed, the really bringing yourself into that relationship and blending two people's dreams and aspirations and what you had going into marriage to talk about what this idea was going to be like. I definitely was not aware at that point, like Kashmir is, to ask those kind of questions. Michael, you got married a little later than we did.
About a decade later. Yeah, I had the fortune of watching some guys my own age walk through this and stumble through it, and I did not do it perfectly, but I had a lot of resources and a lot of support to think through this a little bit better about how to really focus on my wife and at the same time work on myself. I was fortunate in that way, but what I'm hearing from Kashmir right now is that there's a tension between these two major areas of life. The marriage and that relationship and investing in that, having enough time to invest in that relationship and grow it, but also for himself, his dreams, what he wants to do, what he wants to pursue, and he mentioned entrepreneurship. At the end of the day, when he puts in his 40 to 60 hours, however much he works, he only has this little window to work on two major areas of life, and he's feeling like he has to choose between the two. I think what I want to tell you, Kashmir, is you don't have to choose, man. You don't have to choose.
Yeah, that's a good word. That's a myth we want to debunk, is that you have to choose between the two. And you've got yourself that you need to continually work on. You have your marriage, staying curious about your wife, these entrepreneurial pursuits that you have. Again, we just affirm that you're asking the right questions.
He used the word set the foundation, or he wanted that foundation to be strong. That's another important point there. Keep evaluating how your foundation is and make deposits in that foundation. In entrepreneurship, a lot of people we're driven guys here, and we're always thinking about the end, what we want. And it's easier sometimes to focus on what we don't have than to build the foundation and put the work in at the front end. It was something that he wants to do, and just keep that stance, because that's huge.
No, it's absolutely right in terms of setting that foundation. He's focused on setting the foundation. Michael, when you talk about setting a foundation in a marriage, is that a one and done kind of conversation? Like you pour that foundation, you start building that house, and you can just move away, or
Check. I'm done with that conversation. Yeah, we don't need it. These are just things you have to solve. Figure out what you're going to do for the rest of your life and get your marriage in a good place, and then you can check those two boxes and do whatever you want from here on out.
sounds like an easy conversation over coffee, and you're done.
That's right. Hasn't been that way for me. I know we were talking to Mark Ross the other night. He's been married for, 36 years. He just said something that was so encouraging to all of us. He's still getting to know his wife. He's still having these conversations and investing in his marriage and trying to figure it out. So this is not a one and done thing. This is a conversation that you commit to having for the rest of your life, the rest of your marriage.
Yeah, Michael, I love that that's an ongoing conversation. And bringing up Mark Ross, who is an excellent coach, he talked about that idea that, hey, I'm 30 plus years in and I still don't have this figured out. I mean, this idea of setting the foundation, there's always going to be wet cement out there. You always just have to continually, one thing we talked about in the hot tub, this hot tub mastermind we had, was stay curious. Stay curious as you grow, as your wife grows. What are the questions you need to ask? And so it's that conversation that's ongoing. It's those little conversations over time, and not one big one.
He was quoting Roger, too, because Roger has the retirement answer man, our good friend who's here with us in San Diego. He always says on his podcast that the best relationships, there's never one big knockout, drag out where you sit your spouse down and say, like kind of unpack it all at once. It's just an ongoing thing.
I think it's the same thing with both personal growth, your dreams, and the marriage, right? Those are ongoing conversations, and there isn't an end to that. The win here for me has been having that conversation and having it ongoing, not figuring it out so you can move on.
No, I like what you're sharing there, Jamie and Michael, about it's these intentional conversations. I think that's one of the words we need to talk about here is being intentional. The fact that he's even asked this question shows some intentionality on his part. Most guys don't come into a marriage being intentional about how am I going to grow? How am I going to grow this relationship, my business pursuit? Most guys need to be aware. Like Kashmir, you have these ideas that you're wrestling with as you're bringing into this new marriage. She has the same.
If he shows an interest in her hopes and dreams and helps her bring those out, now the conversation is reciprocal. It's not just him going to her saying, hey, I want my life too. You change those pronouns like we've talked about in other episodes to us and we talk about what do we want to do? What are your dreams? What are my dreams? How can we mesh those together and have an awesome life together?
Yeah, and I've seen that even just the last couple of years with you and Ruthie. I mean, think about 10 years ago or 15 years ago as a couple. You're totally different people. and the interest and what you're working on with your own coaching or what you're doing together, it's because you've had those intentional conversations over time to see, okay, how are we each growing? What do we want to bring to this marriage, and how do you want to, what's the vision for our next 5 years and our next 5 years?
It is a mindset shift, though, because I know I always felt the pressure to figure out what my marriage was going to be and what my career was going to be and be done with it. If you're a human being, you just change and evolve over time, and new adventures come up and new things come. Like you said, you become different people. And the win here is to continue to explore together and get in a habit of doing that work together.
Yeah, and it's work. It's a little bit, intentionality is going to take some time to say, okay, we want to be intentional with our time, how we spend it, the conversations we have. You don't drift somewhere intentionally. You have to get somewhere intentionally.
I'm also thinking about Kashmir right now. He's working at least probably 40 to 50 hours a week, coming home at the end of the day. He has maybe a 1 hour, 2 hour window at the end of the day, and he has to choose which one of these enormous balls am I going to tackle tonight. That can be a high pressure situation. Can we talk about that dynamic a little bit?
I'll tell you one thing I picked up in that conversation was he already is being intentional. He's a guy who listens to podcasts. He listens to audiobooks. He's got this long commute, almost 2 hours a day. And so he's pouring into himself in terms of learning and what he's trying to be doing intentionally. He didn't say he's listening to a bunch of music both ways. He's already making some of those efforts. And so now maybe as a couple, bringing that together and saying, what do we want to spend our few hours in the evening together on?
Yeah, and we've learned this the hard way. Me and you, Nima, are getting married young. Marriage is the best place for personal growth to happen if you do it together. You don't have to work on personal growth individually. You can listen to things together. You can take a course on marriage. You can read books on personal development and get your spouse's take on it, because we're so different than our spouse. Marriage has a way of knocking your rough edges off if you lean into that relationship and you learn from it.
I'm seeing Kashmir say right now, like, oh, man, but I'm so much different than my wife, and what we want to do is so much different, so I need like that time by myself to work on it. Sometimes, I know for me and Lydia, sometimes we are doing completely different things, but we're sitting next to each other, drinking some tea at the end of the night. I'm working on my laptop, and she's doing something for her right next to me. And we're having discussions about what we're working on as we're working on it at the same time. And it kind of joins us, and we feel supported in that, in our journey. So you can do these things together.
I love that. Alicia and I are the same way as you and Lydia. We're in the living room after the kids are going to bed. We got our laptops open. We're each right now working on a couple of different things. And the other night we just attended an online webinar together, because it's like, this is going to help
cool.
us both.
Ruthie and I are taking a course at our church that's called Reengage, and it's 16 weeks. Almost like marriage counseling or marriage coaching, where there's not a lot of drama in it, and we're talking about our relationship and what we want and how to serve each other better. It's added so much value to our relationship just because we spend that time together and we're investing in our marriage. I thought that was going to be really a hard thing to do, but there's a formula to it. It's actually been a lot of fun and really great for our marriage.
It's been awesome to see you guys be that intentional with your marriage relationship and just pouring into that.
Thanks,
and
brother.
It sounds pretty cool too. You got like date night, they feed you, there's kids, childcare. Yeah. I want that. This is good, because what I'm hearing is this is not a formula. This is not some, like you said, Michael, box to check or some sequential secret. It's ongoing conversation. And one of the things we're talking about here, and point number 3, is you don't have to choose between the two. You really can have it all. We talked about this idea of intentionality. What are some practical ways that you can have it all? What do you need to maybe cut out?
Oh, this is a tough one, because sometimes when you're tired at the end of the day, you don't want to cut out those things that make you feel good and make you feel rested. That's a question to wrestle with. What are you willing to look at the end of your day? You have your favorite show that you watch at least 2 hours a week, or what else is in the picture in that evening slot that isn't as important as these two major things?
Well, there was a study from Nielsen Research Group, and the average American watches about 35 hours of television. Well, that was like 10 years ago. So now the 35 hours is Netflix screen time, going on Facebook and just looking at cat videos. There's a lot of time that we can find to invest in our marriage and our business if we look for it. And I think we have to count the cost to see, are we willing to make a sacrifice if we want something that we don't have? So for me, I'm just learning that at the beginning of my marriage, watching movies and numbing myself after a long day at work, I didn't say that was more important than my relationship with my wife, but in a way I was, because I wasn't intentional to cut that stuff out and spend time with her and say, honey, can we just sit down and talk or just hang out? Even like what you guys do with your wives, where you just pull out a laptop and snuggle up together and just sort of do some work. That's way more fruitful to do work together than it is to watch some movie on Netflix.
But everybody watches movies at the end of the day. I mean, that's a normal thing, right? It's not bad. And everybody, most people have average marriages, right?
And most people don't grow a side business or have an extraordinary marriage where they're crazy about their wives.
Totally. So there's some new habits to form that are way, way different than what everybody else does. I know sometimes what's really helpful for Lydia and I is we'll just get out of the house. We'll go take a walk where we can't possibly be on our device or watching something. If you're walking together and you start talking, it leaves space and it opens up the conversation to things that are really important and that we care about.
A lot easier to do that when you're on a walk, your devices are back at home, you're looking forward, it's almost a physical manifestation of you're looking forward, you're dreaming, you're visioning together. A lot harder to do that when Netflix is in front of you and you're plopped in front of a couch. You're not going to be talking and dreaming about what's going on next.
Tom Ziegler, who is Zig Ziglar's son, was on our mastermind group call a couple weeks ago with Dan Miller. And I can't remember who asked the question in our group, but the question was like, what is one thing that you could do that would propel your success? And the way Tom Ziegler answered that is the easiest way to catapult yourself into success is take one habit and change it for a more successful habit. So take a habit that's not successful and change it into a success habit. Imagine just one night a week if you would take binging Netflix for 4 hours and grab your wife's hand, and especially we're moving into the summer months where the sun's out longer, and say, honey, we're going to go take a walk and go to the park or ride bikes. Imagine just doing that even one day a week. That would change everything in your marriage if you did that for the first 2 years of your marriage before children came along.
Amen to that, man. That would make such a huge difference. And right now I'm hearing, I know Kashmir's listening, and he's thinking, these guys live like in San Diego and Florida and Tennessee. I'm in Wisconsin, man. It's snowing outside. I'm not going walking. Well, Kashmir, if you think that's cold, reach over on the other side of the bed when your wife is gone and see how cold the bed is.
Ooh. Value bomb right there from Michael McGreevy. That's good.
So turn off the Netflix and grab your baby's hand and take a walk.
Or snowshoe.
Your honey, your sugar plum, your mamita, mamacitas.
No, that's good. And Kashmir, we just want to, again, affirm what you're doing. You are already intentional with that drive time of pouring into yourself. And I think we talked about this in the pool, actually. Like you're the guy who is taking care of himself. That analogy of the airplane that comes in and the oxygen masks come down, put yours on first so you can help others. And guys, there's a little bit of a challenge here where we talk about, does it sound selfish to take care of yourself?
It does sound selfish, but you think about what happens when you invest in yourself. How much do you have to add to your relationship? What are you bringing to your wife if you never work on yourself?
I'm going to get a little bit of accountability here through the podcast. We did that 7-minute workout today. I almost didn't get through it, and I'm making excuses about my shoulder, but I haven't really put the time or the energy in. So is it selfish for me to sleep another 7 minutes instead of doing a 7-minute workout? These are just little deposits that you do over time, and they add up into mountains. We make excuses that I don't have the time or the resources. But then we sleep in, we watch Netflix, we say yes to all these other things that don't really change our life. I mean, we all have 168 hours in every single week. Let's face it, we all are little wusses sometimes, that we love the routine that we're in. life is hard for all of us, and it's difficult to change habits for all of us. But if we look at that foundation of our marriage and we want to grow a business, we have to say that's more important than some of these other things that we have going on.
Absolutely. And Kashmir, if your wife wanted to work on herself, if she wanted to explore one of her dreams, would you call her selfish and say, no, you need to spend time with me? Oh, man, you'd be excited for her. You'd be like, yeah, how can I help you? I want to get behind you. Let's do this together. And so give her the opportunity to do the same thing with you.
Absolutely. Those are good words, gentlemen. So working on yourself, your marriage, your entrepreneurial pursuits takes attention. It takes intentionality. So how about you? What are you doing? How are you approaching that dynamic to work on yourself, to pour into your wife, to be intentional with the time that you have, to work on these side hustles, these entrepreneurial pursuits that you might both have? How can you be a better student of your spouse? Where do you need to cut the fat on how you spend your time in order to focus? Being this intentional will pay dividends for you, for your spouse, and for your best life together.
Thank you for listening to the Entrepreneurial Family Man Podcast. Visit efmlife.com to connect with us and others like you who are pursuing success in enterprise, family, and marriage.